The mail came late that day. Not that I was expecting anything. Habit, I guess. I pulled out a stack of grocery ads, a church flyer, and two credit card offers I'd never apply for. That was it. Nothing else. As I stood there flipping through the junk mail, Mom passed by with her usual half attention. "Don't forget Brenda's big day next Saturday," she said, not even glancing up. "You'll help in the kitchen, right?" There it was. Not an invitation, not a request, just an assignment. I nodded without thinking. My hands were still holding the empty envelopes. No RSVP, no card, no mention of me beyond the apron I'd be wearing. Did they forget me? Or was I never meant to be included? Sometimes it's not what they say, it's what they never send. I went inside. The house smelled like masa and fried onions. Prepping had already begun. Mom handed me the same apron she always did, stiff with old starch, the red letters still smug on the front. "Here comes trouble, that damn thing." Brenda bought it as a joke when we were teenagers. They all laughed. I cried in the pantry, not because of the words, but because nobody thought twice about handing it to me year after year, as if I never outgrew being their burden. I held it for a second, put it on. The weight wasn't from the fabric, it was from the years. In the kitchen mirror, I caught a glimpse of myself, tired, a little softer around the face, eyes older than 33 should allow. Brenda walked in, full makeup, lips pursed like she was practicing for a camera. She didn't even notice me, just stood there fluffing her hair and said, "Mom wants the tamales ready by 5. I'm doing the color board for the tables." Then she was gone. Even silence is loud when someone you love acts like your wallpaper. Dinner came. A planning feast for the big day. The long table was set, name cards in curled gold font, all except one. Mine was scribbled in pencil, just the letter T, and taped to the farthest edge. I sat anyway. They praised Brenda for everything. The napkin folds, the playlist, the cake samples. She basked in it. Every nod, every "you're amazing," she drank like wine. A cousin asked me, "You still doing that food delivery thing?" I hadn't driven since the accident. My back still ached on cold mornings. "No," I said. "I'm between things." Mom chimed in before I could finish. "She's finding herself again." The table chuckled. No one looked at me. I smiled to keep from breaking. You get tired of proving your presence, so you start fading yourself out. Later that night, in the bathroom mirror, I stood rehearsing what I should have said. Why wasn't I invited? Do I even matter? Is there a reason I'm just helping? The apron still hung around my neck like a label. Then Brenda walked by in the hallway, phone pressed to her ear. I heard her say, "Mom says Tanya's helping out, thank God. She's good for that at least." I didn't confront her. I stepped back. Let the hallway swallow me. Maybe being quiet keeps the peace. But it never gave me a place. In the kitchen, the sound of laughter rolled in from the backyard, fire pit crackling, music playing. Brenda's friends probably toasting with rosé and compliments. I washed the dishes. My reflection stared back at me from the microwave door, apron on, eyes dull, shoulders caved in. A single tear slipped out. I didn't wipe it. The house had that forced calm, like everyone agreed not to make a sound that might set someone off. I stayed in the kitchen, head down, hands moving, chopping onions, mixing masa, refilling trays. The tamales wouldn't fold themselves, and keeping busy was the only thing keeping my chest from tightening. Brenda drifted through around noon, rehearsing her vows under her breath like a theater kid in dress rehearsal. She didn't speak to me, didn't ask about the food or offer help, just practiced her lines in the mirror near the fridge, lips puckered, voice rising and falling with artificial sincerity. A neighbor came by, one of Mom's friends from church, holding a casserole wrapped in foil. "Oh, Brenda, you're glowing," she said, kissing the air near Brenda's cheek. Then she glanced at me and smiled politely. "Is Tanya helping with the catering?" Brenda didn't answer. I nodded instead, smiled too, because that's what you do when you're not actually part of the story. You nod, you smile, you vanish. People only ask about you when they've already decided who you are. Later that afternoon, the soup was simmering too long. I knew it, but between checking the rice and trying not to get flour all over the good dish towels, I lost the time. When Mom walked in and lifted the lid, she barely looked before letting out a dramatic sigh. "The soup's ruined." She said it like I'd done it on purpose, like she'd been waiting for me to mess up. Before I could answer, she grabbed the pot and slammed it down on the counter with a crack that made the two visiting aunts flinch. Why not die instead of shaming me every day? What did I do to deserve a son like you? That silence was different. It wasn't the kind where people try not to stare. It was the kind where everyone already agreed not to say a word. Brenda blinked, looked away. One of the aunts put a hand to her mouth. No one spoke. No one stood up. I looked down at the pot, at my hands, at the floor. When they let it happen once, they'll let it happen forever. I went upstairs without finishing the tamales. I didn't pack much, just a few clothes, a phone charger, my wallet. I didn't know if I was leaving for good or just escaping for the night. But I knew I couldn't stay in that house one more minute with the sound of that pot slam echoing inside me. I lay down fully dressed, still felt the heat from the kitchen, still heard the laughter downstairs. It wasn't cruel laughter, it was regular, casual, like nothing had happened, like I didn't happen. Some sounds heal you. Others tell you who you've never been. I fell asleep sometime after midnight, sweating through my shirt, head pounding from whatever was setting off my fever, or maybe just the shame burning up my spine. Around 2 a.m., I woke up needing water. My mouth was dry, my body aching, like I'd been walking uphill in my dreams. I stumbled downstairs, lightheaded. No one was around. When I tried the kitchen door, it wouldn't budge, locked. I checked my pocket for my spare key. It turned but wouldn't click. The lock had been changed, or jammed. Then I saw the note taped crooked to the glass. "Since you said nothing at dinner, I assumed you didn't want to be part of this weekend. Don't bring drama tomorrow." No signature, but she didn't need to sign it. I stood there in silence for a full minute, rereading the same line. My throat hurt, not from illness, from not yelling. I wrapped myself in an old towel from the laundry room, walked out to the porch bench and sat down. It was cold, not enough to freeze, but enough to make my knees lock and my hands curl in. Silence doesn't protect you. It just makes them bolder. The sun hadn't risen yet, but the sky was lightening. I couldn't tell if time was crawling or if I had just learned how slow it moves when you have nowhere to go. A jogger's feet slapped the sidewalk. I didn't look up until she stopped. "Hey, are you all right?" I nodded, but my face must have said otherwise because she squinted at me, concerned. "I'll be right back." She disappeared around the corner and returned a minute later with a folded blanket. Handed it to me without asking. Nobody deserves to freeze, not even overnight. She jogged off without waiting for thanks. The sun had barely broken the horizon when I opened my eyes. The blanket the jogger had given me was damp from the early morning air, and my shoulders ached from the bench's hard slats. I sat up slowly, trying to ignore the stiffness in my joints and the weight behind my eyes. The front door creaked open. My mother stood there, already dressed, earrings in, her mouth set in that same tight line she wore whenever guests were coming. "You need to change. People are coming today." No good morning, no question about why I was on the porch, not even a glance at the blanket. I walked past her without a word, up the stairs, into the bathroom. I washed up, changed into something neutral, and tucked my hair behind my ears. As I stepped out, Brenda walked by. Her eyes scanned me from top to bottom. "You look like hell. Don't ruin the photos." I said nothing. There was nothing new to say. When they ignore the wound, it's not because they missed it, it's because they caused it. Heading down the hallway, I passed a photo of Brenda in her cap and gown, senior year, smiling like the world owed her a future. It was framed, centered, lit by a tiny hallway bulb like some shrine. There was no photo of me, but that day still lived in my bones. Graduation morning, I'd been told I was giving part of the closing speech, not the whole thing, just a small piece at the end. I'd practiced it for days, cleaned up my shoes, printed out my script. Minutes before the ceremony, the principal pulled me aside. "I'm sorry, Tanya, but we had to condense the program for time." Brenda still spoke. In fact, they gave her a bonus introduction. I stood near the stage, script crumpled in my hand, pretending to smile for the cameras. That was the first time I learned what it means to be erased while standing in plain view. By noon, the house was buzzing. Tables were set up in the backyard. Myra handed out assignments. Brenda gave orders like she owned the property. Inside, place cards were lined up across the dining table, elegant cursive for everyone. Except one. Mine was scribbled in blue ballpoint pen, taped under the lip of the table. It read, "Kitchen help." No last name, no flourish. Just that. I gently tried to move it, to replace it with one of the spares in the drawer. But Mom saw me. "Don't make this about you," she said, low and firm. A cousin offered to scoot over, but Myra shot him a look that made him change his mind. "Could you bring out the drinks, Tanya?" she added, like it was my actual name. I did as she asked, holding that tray like it was armor, or maybe evidence. They didn't move me to the back because I'm unimportant. They moved me so I couldn't be seen remembering I matter. When dinner started, Brenda stood up for a toast. She had the voice for it. Clear, trained, a little theatrical, like someone who'd practiced every word in the mirror. "I just want to thank everyone for being here," she said. "It takes a village to make something beautiful." People nodded, laughed. "And sometimes," she added, eyes brushing past me, "it takes grace to support the spotlight instead of chase it. Some of us are just built that way." My hands shook as I poured wine into the guests' glasses. I smiled. On cue. After the plates were cleared and dessert was passed around, I spotted an empty chair near the patio, just a simple spot where I could sit and rest my back for a moment. I walked toward it. Before I could sit, Myra walked by, lifted the chair with one hand, and placed it beside a guest who had been standing. "There," she said cheerfully. "Everyone should have a seat." I stood there, holding an empty plate. Some chairs are taken from you. Others were never yours to begin with. The morning air didn't sting like the night before, but my bones still ached from the porch bench. I woke up slower than usual, part fever, part the weight of pretending nothing happened. I walked back inside without saying a word. Myra was already at the stove, flipping tortillas like the world hadn't cracked open 12 hours earlier. She didn't ask where I'd slept. Didn't look up. "We need more salsa for the trays," she said flat, like placing a grocery order. I nodded. My voice stayed buried somewhere beneath my ribs. Brenda was gone, off doing last-minute wedding errands. I stayed behind, like I always did, handling things, as they like to call it. The house had a rhythm. Everyone had a part, a script they stuck to. Except me. They all know their lines. I was never given mine. That afternoon, I checked my email. A rejection from the catering company I'd interviewed with weeks ago. No specifics. Just the usual. "We've decided to move forward with another candidate." I wasn't surprised, but something felt off. I opened the resume I had submitted. Then I opened the attached file in the reply. They weren't the same. The version they had included a line I never wrote. "Candidate continues to struggle with emotional regulation." I sat still. My pulse quickened, but my hands didn't move. I clicked open my sent folder. The email was there, time-stamped, but the file was edited. I right-clicked for metadata. Last modified. Not by me. Whispered into the empty room, just to hear it out loud. She didn't just close doors. She locked them before I got there. I closed my laptop. An hour later, I was in the waiting room of Dr. Reyes's office. She'd seen me through harder years, back when things were darker and my own voice was the one hurting me the most. She greeted me kindly. "You doing okay?" I nodded. She folded her hands. "Your mother called." "She said you've been slipping again." I blinked. "She called?" "She checks in every week. I thought you knew." "No," I said, sharper than I meant. "I didn't." Dr. Reyes looked at her screen, unsure whether to close it or not. "She said you asked for her to stay involved, back when you signed the release." I remembered signing something, years ago. In the thick of it, I didn't think it still counted. My stomach turned. Myra had been shaping my story behind closed doors, whispering into rooms I wasn't in. They weren't just telling stories about me. They were publishing fiction under my name. I didn't cry. I just sat there, said little, Left early. That night, I went into the closet of my childhood bedroom and dug out an old Android phone I hadn't touched in years, plugged it in, downloaded a voice recorder app, left it charging in the kitchen corner, behind a fake plant. Then I opened my email, started organizing, screenshots, messages, photo timestamps, versions of documents I'd sent versus the ones they'd forwarded in my name. I pulled every thread. Myra's voice rang in my memory, soft, measured, always coded in concern. Brenda's voice on the podcast. The family's eyes whenever I tried to speak up. My therapist once told me, when you feel powerless, organize the truth. That's your weapon. So I did. I whispered to myself, I'm done asking. I'm documenting. Around midnight, I checked the recorder. I wanted to test the volume, the clarity, the pickup range. What I heard made my body go cold. Myra, on the phone, her voice casual. She's unstable but quiet. As long as she stays like that, she's useful. I paused the recording, listened again. She's useful, not loved, not heard. Useful. They've kept me quiet long enough, but I'm not mute. I'm just waiting. It started with a text. Your sister's new podcast episode is incredible. I stared at it, not sure how to respond. I hadn't even known she had a podcast. I clicked the link and let it play while I sat on the edge of my bed, one leg folded under the other like I used to do during college lectures. Brenda's voice poured through the speaker, warm, practiced, effortlessly calculated. There's someone in my life, she began, who's always struggled. Not for lack of heart. He's got one of the best hearts I know, but life just never quite clicked for him. I've spent years protecting him, silently, because I believe family means doing the hard things in the dark. I knew exactly who she meant. She never said my name, but she didn't have to. She said once, then quickly corrected herself. He. My stomach dropped. She was turning me into a cautionary tale. Again, the comments below, full of admiration. So inspiring, Brenda. You're what we need more of in the world, people who love without needing credit. No one questioned it. Why would they? It's surreal to hear your own life, filtered through someone else's forgiveness. By noon, her post had been shared by 2 influencers and a nonprofit blog that wrote, "A quiet hero speaks truth about unconditional love." I wanted to laugh, or scream. Instead, I stared at a poster on Instagram for a women's empowerment brunch. Brenda's name listed right under the keynote speaker. Her quote printed in cursive above her headshot. Sometimes you carry people because it's the only way they'll feel weightless. I scrolled through a sea of likes. My finger tapped the screen again and again, but my chest was frozen. The truth dies quietly when everyone claps for the liar. Later that day, I noticed the living room felt emptier. The light coming through the windows hit differently, bouncing off the floor instead of the polished wood. That's when I realized the piano was gone, the one Gran gave me, the one I played while she fought through chemo, while her fingers trembled next to mine on the bench, the one that still held the smell of lemon polish and dust. I walked into the kitchen. Where's the piano? Myra didn't look up from slicing cucumbers. It was collecting dust, she said. We sold it to help cover the centerpieces for Brenda's tables. Flowers aren't cheap. She said it like it made sense, like the trade was fair. I stared at her back, her knife, her motion, no hesitation. It was mine, I said, voice low. It was a gift from your grandmother, to the family, and Brenda is getting married. Let's be adults about this. I walked away. Grief becomes fury when the last thing you loved is priced and pawned. The next morning, I drove to the pawn shop. I don't even know how I remembered where it was. Some corner lot near the freeway, chipped paint and sun-faded posters in the windows. The piano was already gone. Sold yesterday. The buyer, confidential. Of course it was. I stood there a long time, pretending to browse. Picked up a rusted harmonica, set it back down, drove home without the radio on. Once in my room, I opened her podcast again, listened to the same episode. This time, I heard the venom behind the softness, the manipulation behind the mercy. You stole my story, then you sold my song. That night, the house was quiet. No one asked me to come to dinner. No one even knocked. I sat in the space where the piano used to live. My hands floated above the coffee table like they remembered the keys. 1, 2, 4. Pause. My eyes closed. The silence used to be peace. Now, it's proof I'm disappearing. It was still early, maybe a little past 6. The house was quiet. I sat up in bed slower than usual. My body wasn't in pain, not exactly. It was more like heaviness, like my bones carried too many memories they didn't sign up for. I grabbed the old sewing kit from under my desk. The box still had my grandmother's handwriting on the side, a faint label that read, "Buttons Thread." When I opened it, something shifted at the bottom. A folded envelope, yellowed slightly. My name in her script. Inside was a short letter, probably written in the weeks before she passed. No grand revelations, just a few lines of clarity that only came from someone who had been through storms of her own. "I see how quiet you are," it said, "but I see how hard you carry things no one else will lift. Don't let them rename you. Your silence is not their eraser." I sat there with that letter in my hands, head bowed like I was at church. I didn't cry because I was broken. I cried because for once, someone had seen me before they decided I wasn't worth seeing. A couple hours later, I stepped out to the backyard. No apron, no tray, no to-do list. Mrs. Caldwell, the neighbor from 2 doors down, was watering her succulents. She looked over. "Morning, Tanya. You look more like yourself today." That stopped me. Just that. Someone saying my name, not girl, not you, not kitchen help. "Tanya." I smiled, real this time. We talked about the weather and her husband's new cholesterol meds. 5 minutes of nothing that meant everything. Sometimes the smallest acknowledgments fix the deepest fractures. Back inside, I opened my tablet. The screen was cracked in the corner, the kind of damage you stop noticing once it becomes part of the pattern. I created a new folder. Named it Reclaim. I dragged in everything I had: email chains, old design files, proposals that Brenda had passed off as her own, screenshots of texts where Myra rewrote history in real time. I pulled up my original event layout, the one Brenda presented as hers for that fundraiser 6 months ago. Mine had sketches on napkins and photos from test runs. Hers was a polished PDF with no soul. I labeled every file with dates, cross-referenced timestamps. If they're going to edit me out, I'll submit the uncut version. I uploaded the folder to 2 cloud drives, then backed it all up on a USB and dropped it into a tampon box, one place no one in this house would touch. After lunch, I opened TikTok. Not my real account, one I'd made under a fake name, no photos, no links to me. I filmed the letter from Gran, no voiceover, no explanation, just the paper, slowly unfolding. I added soft instrumental music. The kind you hear in therapy lobbies, the kind that almost hides your sobbing. Within an hour, comments trickled in. "This feels like my grandmother talking to me." "I wish someone had written this to me." This hit me harder than a shout. That night, I was in my room when Brenda stormed in. Hair done, heels still on, phone in hand. She threw her purse onto the bed. "Why is your name showing up on my alerts?" I closed my laptop slowly, careful not to knock the USB out of its port. I looked her dead in the eyes and said nothing. But inside, I smiled for the first time in days. They forgot I had a voice. Now they'll remember the name they tried to erase. The sun was lowering, casting long lines across the backyard shed as I opened it to dig through some old boxes. I was looking for nothing in particular, maybe a piece of myself I left behind in storage. Instead, I found Aunt Tara sitting in the corner with a chipped mug of tea and her legs crossed like she'd been there for hours. She looked up, not surprised to see me. "You keeping it all in?" she asked quietly. "Or are you planning to let it burn the right way?" I didn't answer. Didn't need to. She already knew. She took a long sip, then reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small recording device. Old, analog, the kind you'd see in movies, not in modern life. "I should have said something years ago," she said. "I watched it happen to you, again and again. But I wasn't brave then. Don't be like me." I held the recorder in my palm. "Forgiveness isn't forgetfulness," she added. "And survival isn't submission." I didn't hand it back. That evening, I sat in my room. Light from the hallway crawled across the carpet, inching toward me like it didn't want to be seen either. I pulled up the folder on my laptop. Reclaim. Still growing, still organized. One video caught my eye. Dated 2017. It was from Brenda's big charity luncheon, one of those early moments when she was just starting to play Leader of the Year. In the video, I was setting up chairs, folding napkins, fixing audio cables. In the background, Brenda was giving a speech about how she had pulled the event together all by herself. Then came the voice. Myra's just off camera, murmuring to someone else. "He's useful in the background. Don't give him a mic." The sentence hit harder now than it did then. I clipped the video, edited it down, removed the fluff, let the silence hang after her words. Then I added one sentence, white text on black background, not erased, just edited out. I uploaded it to a small subreddit for survivors of family trauma. Then to my hidden TikTok account. No tags, no caption beyond the quote. Within a few hours, people started commenting. This, right here. Felt this in my bones. Same script, different cast? It wasn't viral, not yet. But it had heat. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen. Brenda was pacing near the fridge, phone glued to her ear, eyes darting between the screen and the floor. She looked up and blurted, "Why are people tagging me in this? What did you do?" I poured myself a glass of water, took my time. "I posted a memory," I said. "That's not illegal, is it?" She stared at me like she didn't know whether to scream or cry. Myra walked in behind her, holding a grocery bag. "Fix it," she snapped. I turned to her. "It's already broken. I'm just showing the cracks." Brenda stormed out. I sat at the table, ate my toast in silence. That afternoon, Tara texted me. "Saw the clip. You moved with grace. Keep steady." I opened my laptop again. This time, not to browse, to build. I created a document, one that mapped it all. The emails, the fake resume, the missing piano, the job I never got to apply for because someone else rewrote my story. I linked documents to timelines, scanned receipts, cited quotes. Each piece fit together, not like a puzzle, but like a blueprint. They never thought I'd organize the storm. But storms follow patterns, and so do lies. By evening, I'd backed it all up, uploaded copies to 3 cloud accounts and a password-protected drive. If they wanted to play public, I was ready. A message popped up on TikTok. It wasn't a like, it wasn't a repost, it was a DM. "I know what it feels like. They erased me too. You're not alone." I clicked on the profile. A woman from Sacramento. 80,000 followers. Her content. All about reclaiming identity after emotional abuse. I leaned back in my chair. Quiet doesn't mean alone. Quiet is how revolutions begin. My phone was buzzing before the sun was even fully up. Not 1 or 2 messages. Dozens, comments, tags, missed calls, people I hadn't heard from in years asking, "Is this you?" The video from the day before, the one with Myra's voice in the background, dismissing me like a prop, had made its rounds. It wasn't viral like celebrity gossip, but it hit the right people, quiet places, healing communities, survivors. It was reshared under hashtags like Gaslighting 101 and Family Doesn't Always Mean Safe. And then there was the clip from the kitchen, the pot slam. My mother's words, crystal clear. "Why not die instead of shaming me?" Someone had matched the audio with an old family photo slideshow. I don't know who. Maybe someone online with editing skills and too much empathy, but it played like a documentary now. Myra yelling, Brenda smiling, me, always in the background. I never screamed, but now everyone hears me anyway. By late morning, the wedding planner called to check in. I overheard it. Brenda's voice had lost its sparkle. She paced back and forth through the kitchen, barefoot, wrapped in a towel. "I understand," she said. "Yes, we're aware. We're handling it." She hung up and turned on me. "You did this," she snapped. I looked up from my tea. "I didn't do anything," I said. "I just stopped deleting myself." Myra came in a few minutes later, holding her phone like a loaded weapon. I'm going to need you to post something, she said. Just something that clears this up, for the family's sake. No. Her eyes narrowed. Don't start this again. It never stopped, I replied. They stood there, both of them, desperate to salvage the story they'd been selling for years. But the cracks were showing, and the world had eyes now. By afternoon, a comment appeared under one of the reposts of the video. A name I recognized from college. Didn't Tanya design this layout for her senior project? Then another. A side-by-side image. My original proposal for a community art space. Brenda's charity project, the one she'd been praised for, matched it line for line. Then came the LinkedIn shares, Instagram stories, Twitter threads. No hashtags this time, just receipts. I didn't post anything. I didn't need to. It only takes one match to light a room full of lies. That night, Myra cornered me in the laundry room, the hum of the dryer filling the silence between us. You need to take this down. All of it. I'm warning you. You don't get to warn me anymore. Brenda's unraveling. She can't eat. She's crying all day. And you're tearing this family apart. I pulled out my phone. Hit record. Let it run in my pocket. You've spent years keeping me quiet, I said. And now you're mad I'm not whispering anymore? She didn't answer. She just walked out. 10 minutes later, I got the text. The wedding's off. I hope you're proud. I sat on my bed and stared at the screen. No joy, no revenge, just wait. They built an empire on silence. I just stopped paying rent. The flyer came through a forwarded email from a woman I barely knew. I clicked it open while reheating leftovers, expecting another church newsletter or neighborhood invite. But it wasn't that. Join us as we honor Beatrice Hindley's legacy, it read. Family-organized memorial, hosted at Myra's house. My grandmother, no mention of me, no call, no text, just a flyer for strangers to see what blood couldn't remember. That Saturday, I stood across the street, just outside the reach of the lawn chairs and folding tables. I watched guests hug and reminisce, holding lemonade cups and paper plates. Brenda looked perfectly composed, offering practiced smiles, accepting condolences like she earned them. I didn't walk in. I laid a bouquet on the edge of the sidewalk, just by the driveway. Wildflowers and one faded rose. The card said, "She never forgot me. I won't let her name forget me either." Sometimes being excluded is a final confirmation, not a fresh wound. A few days later, I stopped by Aunt Tara's place. I'd made banana bread, figured she could use a loaf. We sat in her living room, her cat asleep on a chair that looked older than me. That's when I saw it. A new family photo, framed and hung along the hallway wall. Brenda's engagement shoot, matching pastels. Everyone dressed just enough to look effortless. Myra was there. The aunts. Even the cousins. Everyone but me. Tara caught me looking. She stood beside me quietly, folding her arms. "They told the photographer you weren't available that day," she said low. "I didn't know." I nodded once. No surprise. Just a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. You can't crop someone out of your story without making the story smaller. 2 weeks later, I stood in front of a small building with fresh white paint and a handmade wooden sign, the House of Peaches. Inside, the walls were bare, except for a framed photo of Gran and a small jar of salt beside it. The caption underneath read, "Preserve what matters, leave the rest to dissolve." That room held no secrets, no pretending, just women like me, walking in, closing the door behind them, and for the first time in years, breathing all the way down to their bones. Healing isn't loud, but it leaves a bigger echo than silence ever did. One evening, after we'd locked up, I sat behind the center and pulled out a pen, wrote a letter I knew I'd never send. I addressed it to Myra and Brenda, read it out loud once. No tears, just truth. I wanted your love for years. I don't need it now. I wanted an apology, but your silence was louder. What I found on the other side of survival wasn't revenge, it was breath. I lit the match. Watched the paper curl and blacken, flames licking every word into air. Closure isn't them changing, it's me deciding I'm not waiting anymore. One morning, the bell above the door rang. A young woman stepped in. Couldn't have been more than 25. Hair pulled back, hands tucked in her hoodie sleeves. "I'm not sure where else to go," she said. "My name's Talia, and my mom says I'm the family disappointment." I stood up, walked to the door, smiled, opened it wider.